Hey, this is Christian Naef, author of Freedom, Guns, and Jesus. And I'm a patriot, former Marine, father of two, just someone who loves life, loves to be able to sleep well at night. And we do that by building lives of everyone goes at success a little differently and talking about the real issues of life, the philosophy, working things out. My subtitle is Settled Musings of a Christian. My name is Christian. So, really, the things that I've worked out that I think could be helpful and provide a little bit of perspective to people who are having everyday struggles and really trying to figure things out. Pleasure to be here.
You're watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration, where we share interviews with incredible leaders who are crushing it in life and business.
Hey, Christian, welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you here today. We had a little bit of conversation beforehand, and it sounds like this is going to be just an inspiring conversation.
Thanks, Curtis. Very happy to be here. And just love talking to people who value relationships and want to talk about how to make the world a better place. I appreciate what you do.
Absolutely. And that's the majority of our audience are, we're authors, entrepreneurs, motivational speakers, leaders, people who are already crushing it in life and business. But we really make it a point to highlight folks who are like yourself, trying to do something to make the world a better place with freedom, with just everything about making the world better. So I'm glad to have you on the show. Now, talking about faith and purpose, what inspired you to write Freedom, Guns, and Jesus?
That's interesting. It's not like I set out to make the world a better place by writing a book, because what this is it's my personal blog. I just used a blog format to keep a diary of the issues of life that I was going through from 2008 through 2022 into the COVID era. So, really, I paid a lot of attention to my faith, to philosophy, and I love having deep conversations. And this was a place. I don't know if you remember Saturday Night Live, Deep Thoughts.
Yep.
That title was taken. So I wanted something that would get people's attention way back then. And the title just it talks about people's passions. So passionate topics.
And it looked like you just published this book, February 19th of 25. How is it landing so far as the reviews you're getting back? It's 5-star rating across the board.
Yeah, so one of the best reviews is actually a friend of mine who he goes, "Wow, I didn't know you could actually write." And that was to me the biggest compliment, because this was someone who we had gone through a lot of life together. I've gotten other reviews that were very good as well, but I love the fact that someone who actually knows me, it's kind of like the prophet has no honor in his hometown usually. But when you get someone close to you that's known you for many years and they say, you can actually write. And he said, I started reading it, and 4.5 hours later, I finished it. I just couldn't put it down. That was the ultimate compliment to me. And then, getting nice compliments from perfect strangers is just as good.
That's awesome. Tell me, what does Christian freedom mean to you?
And freedom, you got that whole bondservant of Christ idea that it's when you lay down your life for a better cause that you find the greatest freedom. When you put your trust in someone trustworthy, that's when you can have the most amazing life. And Jesus Christ is the most trustworthy. So if you lay your life out in pursuit of him and knowing him and figuring out who God is and what this life is all about and how to make an impact, that's the ultimate freedom. Otherwise, it's just selfishness or wasted time.
I love that. We've got a lot of viewers on Amazon Fire TV, and people are reading the magazine as well that are former armed services or LEOs. How do you balance grace with grit as a believer in today's culture?
Today's culture has abandoned grit up until this recent turn of events here in politics. We had really turned away from masculinity. We had turned away from leadership. We had turned away from common sense. Grit is, to me, it's doing what's really required and reasonable in a moment and giving an honest answer, a direct approach, and a real solution. And forgetting, just not having that concern about what people think or what's going to be politically correct. So being a former Marine, Marines are all about getting stuff done, getting it done efficiently, getting it done quickly. Probably tried to control things a little too much through most of my life, but I really like to build on a firm foundation, keep integrity the top thing, and follow through and resolve issues, teaching points. I think that was the biggest thing. This whole book, that time period in my life was kind of an encapsulation of the most productive, enjoyable, difficult, responsible period of my life where I had small children into that nuclear family and going through several different churches and growing in my faith and working out issues that a lot of people wouldn't touch a lot of the issues that are covered in this book. Hard, direct issues that most people think is, too far out of the box for them.
Now, talking to a lot of folks that have served in the military, everywhere from SEAL Team Sniper, a couple of SEAL Team Snipers, different guys that are studs, top of the game, whatever they are doing. Can you share a time when your faith was tested and how you pushed through?
My military service was kind of brief. It was from when I was 20 to, 23 years old. And I did most of my time on the Presidential Honor Guard for the first President Bush, but then got sent to Desert Storm for a little while. So there was one night in particular, the one night of combat where everything kind of went into chaos because we were what we call an advance party for headquarters battalion moving up into Kuwait. And I was out front as listening point with a radio, half dug in. So I'm the furthermost guy in a 28-man platoon out in the middle of nowhere. And I heard Iraqi tanks coming. And I called them in, and Marine Air Force told us to hide in the berm. And they came in and blew up all the tanks, basically just a couple hundred yards in front of us. And watching, it's not about anything heroic that I did, but watching the people who claimed to have it all together and then the people who really did hold it together in a stressful situation. That really speaks volumes when you see someone who's gone through the difficult times and held it together and led others effectively. So having a night of combat, not to mention Marine Corps tests you in a lot of other ways, your excellence, your inspections, your honor guard, it was like boot camp all over again when you got there, and then having to have everything squared away because you're marching in front of the president all the time. Just test after test after test. There were
Required massive attention to detail. Now talking about freedom and patriotism, what does freedom mean to you as an American citizen and as a Christian? Is there any overlap or anything where those don't really line up?
As a patriot, it's largely preserving the freedoms that our founding fathers intended for us. For me and my recent political activity, I'm a ordained chaplain, and I was speaking at a Health and Human Services public meeting. And that's not what this interview was really about, but I was speaking against the mask mandate because they had a policy that they were passing that said they could incarcerate anyone 2 years old and older if they weren't wearing a mask indoors. If they refused to, they could incarcerate them for up to 2 years. And I was speaking against that. And I knew people in the jail. I knew a lady who I did jail ministry for 6 years, but I knew a lady who was dating a guy in jail, and they said they put him in solitary confinement until he agreed to get the jab. And that was in a minimum security prison here in North Carolina. And so standing up for people who are being disenfranchised or forced to do certain things, when I saw kids having their art signs saying, "I can't breathe," that was what really moved me to start speaking out in the public forums. And then I was getting thrown out because I wasn't wearing a mask. And then I eventually got arrested for second-degree criminal trespass. And that's not
Tell me
freedom.
about that.
That's tyranny. And
Tell me about getting arrested. I know we heard a little bit about that before, but what actually led up to that and what
so
you're
what led up to it is very few of us refused to put masks on because we knew it was a violation. I donned a mask maybe 3 times through all of COVID to get into certain buildings. It didn't feel right to me. It felt like a violation. It made me feel claustrophobic. Everybody remembers this, but they don't think it can happen again. And it can. It was absolutely crazy how everybody just went along with the story. So when the policies came up in the town halls, they weren't letting people in if they weren't wearing a mask. And they were our local sheriff's deputies were lined up like bouncers in front of the doors. And, it was just really, really not cool. And I got into meetings and I was taking notes and I was trying to I wasn't like organizing. There was a time that I actually addressed the Proud Boys and I was criticizing them for wearing masks and for not, opening up their identity and standing for their country as, identified patriots. And of course, the news media spun that and made it look like I was one of them. And, they did something similar when I got tossed out of a building and I'm trying to get away and I was holding something in my hand and they made it look like I was trying to throw a punch at law enforcement. It's absolutely crazy what I went through as an American trying to stand up for kids and prisoners and other citizens. So, this is all about freedom. It was my motivation is that law enforcement should be punished to the point where they will never act as bouncers for special interests and illegal mandates ever again. And that's what I hope comes out of the lawsuit because they did arrest me when I went 8 seconds over. I had 2 pages to read. I cited some Supreme Court decisions about being able to speak in public forums and to be able to be heard. And they stuffed me in a cop car and arrested me, second-degree criminal trespass. And anyway, so I have a lawsuit right now against the county and the sheriff and HHS. And it's hard because I couldn't find a lawyer. I finally got a guy who took it on, but then he didn't do the strategy right and he left it. So I'm pro se. I'd love to find a lawyer that could a trial lawyer for federal court, but I'm fighting this one on my own. And it's 2.5 years after the event. Everyone who said they'd be behind me, they're gone. They forgot. They think it'll never happen again. But it means being a patriot and fighting for freedom means staying in the fight until the fight's done.
That kind of covers my next question already. That it blows me away too. Around here in Colorado, there are so many people. I still see people on probably a weekly basis, people that are wearing their masks and stuff, but it's more of a political statement. Anybody that you see wearing a mask now is we could all picture that person without calling out anybody or discriminating. But you can picture somebody that if they're not sick and they're not, if you come in, you got strep throat or you got the flu and you're trying to cover your face up to keep from coughing on somebody, that's one thing. But you see people who will not get out of their car without, or maybe they're driving around the car with a mask on. What role do you think that had? Or cool talking about the political side of it. What role do you think that had as far as?
Yeah, I am. I want to get to the spiritual aspects and philosophy. That's really the fun stuff. I went out to lunch today and I gave the guy behind the counter a hard time because he had a mask on. And I kind of jokingly said, "Hey man, you're freaking me out. What's up with the mask? Is COVID back?" And I made him give me an excuse, and he's like, "Well, I deal with the public." And I stopped short. I didn't want. I'm not there to make him feel uncomfortable, but to not say anything when people do that, it's like I gave you a perfectly good immune system. It's not broken. To me, it's a sign of I don't think very deeply. If you're going to don a mask and keep it on when you're not sick, that's not a deep thinker.
I was speaking at an event in I think it was out in San Francisco and was flying out here from Colorado, and a local pilot was on another airline sitting in the back with me there. He wasn't actually flying. He was just flying out to Denver, but we got on the plane, and this is real early on during the mask thing. And they're talking about, the potential of being arrested if you don't wear your mask. And he got back there. The two of us are in the very back seats, and he had his on, pulled it off, left it hanging for one ear, and eating one peanut at a time. We were splitting peanuts toward the end of it, split them in half. And that's, we both had our can of Coke. And I said, "Are you doing what I think you're doing there?" And he said, "Yeah, as long as we're not, he said, I can't lose my job as a pilot, but he said, there's nothing that mandates me to follow this stupidity that they've got us doing." So I thought that was kind of a cool thing to see, even a pilot back there taking a bit of a stand early on when everybody was complying.
Yeah, and the sad thing is the hypocrisy of not only the situation, but of everyone who went along with it. You want to talk about religion for a second, we'll relate it in. If you go to any organized church, you're going to find dysfunction because you're going to find people, and people are dysfunctional all over the place. And if you're in leadership, you're going to try to fix the problems you find. And if you can't fix the problems you find, what I've explained to people is I've had to leave some perfectly good churches because to stay is to condone the dysfunction. Once you're in leadership, you can't say one thing and do another. You can't have a standard and expect everybody to have a different standard. And if you do, or if you ignore the problems and you're in leadership, you're condoning that dysfunction. And that's not integrity.
I think that was it seems to me that that was almost a satanic type of thing. Like, for example, talking about toxic masculinity. You want to see toxic, get rid of masculinity, get rid of the protectors, the providers, the people that are taken care of, and stopping bad things from happening. How do you respond when you believe, or how do you respond to Christians who don't believe guns and Jesus mix?
Well, bringing up guns, I have one of the topics in this book. It says guns, really? It's like, why is this in here? And as Marine and former NRA member or lifetime NRA member, it was like, I'm going to die with my rifle in my cold dead hands. So then you have children and you realize that these little kids, they need a dad. There's a time to lay your arms down and to be a dad and a husband and let someone else pick up the fight. Because there's always going to be people to fight and there's always going to be pacifists. So there are seasons in life. And really, I don't really like the idea that guns has to go along with Christianity. Most Christians want their freedom and love shooting. It's funny, I'm here in Florida and everyone's like, hey, you want to go shooting? All my church groups love it. And I enjoy shooting, but really, I don't really understand why Christians are so into guns, even being a former Marine, other than the desire for personal freedom and accountability. And as I say in my book, we are so outgunned by the government. You know, the reason for being able to carry a gun is so that you can overthrow your government. Well, the government's got stuff that we can't ever do that again because of technology. But what we can do is hold the rest of the population accountable. You can't attack my family. You can't attack my home. And that is a godly trait. We're made in God's image, and He is a provider and a protector and a warrior. And those are masculine qualities that any Christian who is tuning into the heart of God, he's going to end up having to face that in himself.
Now, tell me about that. Tell me more about that, about being a man of God and being somebody that stands up and is willing to do what you believe in and protect, or whatever that means to you.
Ultimately, it's about me being satisfied with me, to be honest with you, because it's costly. My legal battles, it takes a lot of time and attention away from the family, away from work, away from everything. Standing up for others most people don't appreciate it. Lots of people have good intentions and never take action. They never take meaningful action. We saw that during COVID. A lot of cheerleaders, social media. So being someone who actually does something that's productive or fights for others, it's just a different kind of person. And that's why I love veterans. You know, veterans, they're the people that said, I want to preserve the goodness of my country. I want to protect my people. You know, you can say what you want about politics and wars and motivations, but the individuals that go in, they're going in because they're patriotic. They love their family. They love their country. And that's probably the answer you were looking for. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, I'm just highlighting you as, kind of sharing your expertise and insights here. Now, I mean, that aligns exactly with how Jesus lived, not only as the Son of God and the one that redeemed us from our sins, but also He was willing to lay down His life, do the ultimate sacrifice in order to protect us. You talk about passionate action. What does that look like in your life today, besides the speaking and the?
I mean, for me right now in this stage in life, I'm a volunteer chaplain. I'm with an organization that recognizes different ministerial engagement and activity. They kind of look at your whole spiritual resume and then ordain you as a chaplain so you can serve in certain places that require an ordination. Because I've gone to so many churches and they never offer to ordain you unless they're going to put you on the payroll. So for me right now, to be able to stop at an accident scene, one of the coolest things is to stop at an accident scene. I throw my chaplain badge on and I walk up, and the firemen and the police, they look at me, they look at my badge, and they say I'm a chaplain. They say, come on in. I've been able to go into ambulances and pray with people and watch their blood pressure lower and then have the EMT thank me because I got someone's blood pressure down when he couldn't, and that's what God can do for people. People just need to be touched. They need to know that they're loved. They need to know that someone's going to stand up for them. They need to know that somebody cares. And anywhere you have a chance to stand up for someone, to make a difference, to do what nobody else will do, people like to whip out their cameras and film a violent scene. How about putting your freaking phone down and going and doing something to fix the situation? It's a totally different mentality.
Yeah, that's something, be willing to risk yourself. And also I know this is not part of what you teach, but putting yourself in a position where, whether that's, if you believe in guns, especially if you're carrying a CCW, if you carry a gun, you should be training and make sure you're practicing training, make sure you know how to disassemble, put the thing back together. What happens if it jams? Are you able to, are you able to get that unjammed and chamber another round? Can you replace a magazine quick if something happens?
Yeah. Have you had the intelligent conversation?
Yourself?
Yeah. Have the intelligent conversation. If you're not willing to go to the range at least 2 or 3 times a year to be familiar, don't get a gun. It's not going to help you in a close situation. If you're not familiar with it, it's not going to be helpful. But people who are committed to making a difference and being useful to society, it's like being physically fit. You can't step in and help someone in a fight if you're totally out of shape and untrained yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of like talking about just practicing what you preach, doing what you say you can do. If you're a man and you say you're a leader, you say that you're the leader of the household, you need to be doing things to put yourself in a leadership position, be respected as a leader. And also, the thing with people talking about the toxic masculinity thing, being feared as a man. I spent quite a few years with injuries. I'm 11 surgeries in here, but I was bodybuilding for years. And, I'd walk in the room, 252 pounds with veins all over. And there is nobody that, if there's a bad dude that's going to slap his wife around or something, I guarantee he's not going to do it when somebody like that is standing in the room.
That's right.
So put yourself in a position to be intimidating, dangerous, but not, dangerous only people that need that type of a response. Yeah. How can Christian entrepreneurs lead with courage and conviction through uncertain times?
That's an interesting question. I was going to just kind of read through some of these titles of the articles in my book, because all these items like betrayal, I mean, humility, forgiveness. I mean, there's so many ideas in here. I kind of didn't want to spend a whole lot of time. This is not about gun advocacy. This is about philosophy of life. It's about integrity. It's about the traits that we look at and we say, is that trait worth having in my life? What does it take to get it? And what do I ultimately believe on it? Kind of like, what's worth dying for? What hills are worth fighting? And then having an answer. The Bible talks about having an answer ready when you have a question. Have that answer ready. Have you really worked it out? So to lead as an entrepreneur, I've been entrepreneurial my whole life. Financial success was not my main motivation. I went through most of my adult life raising my kids saying, I'm going to make a memory instead of making a buck. And I did. I raised my kids in a beach town and spent a lot of time with them. And because I remember my dad always, driving in an hour and a half to IBM and back and wishing I had more time with them. And I got to change that in my own family. But my entrepreneurial success is still mostly in the future because I'm focusing so much on building a strong foundation. The relationships, being faithful to people who are working out problems, being part of the solution, not just jumping over to the next shiny thing that's producing, but actually having the satisfaction of building, working alongside, having a passion, being a coach to people who want something meaningful to do. Today's workforce is, thankfully, they're demanding purpose and value rather than just a big paycheck. So, much of what motivates me is meaning in life and, doing the right things for the right reason. I mean, I had a tech business most of my life and I kept it small, but my little tagline was the right technology for the right reasons. You don't just slap in what's going to make you the biggest buck. You do what's right for the customer.
Like that. Now, talking about doing the right things, how do we raise bold children in a culture that often rejects truth?
The Bible says, train the children in the way they should go, so that when they're old, they don't depart from it. There's this gap between when you stop teaching them, and then when they're old, they turn 20 something, they go to college, they get their own ideas, they become smarter than you all of a sudden. And, they may go off the reservation in their own faith or whatever. But laying the foundation with children, what I always told my girls is, I can't protect you from everything the world has. So I want to maintain a heart connection so that I can walk with you through it. We didn't my wife did a great job homeschooling our children. And we didn't try to shelter them from everything, but we tried to always be there and talk about the value. What happens when someone makes this choice? I remember sitting down with my daughters and showing them drug addicts and the way their skin and their face was blotchy, all nasty, and saying they made this choice, they end up looking like this, and their lives end up looking like this. So there's gonna be consequences to whatever you choose. And that's one of the biggest things. I say, you'd think that God's greatest gift to humanity is Jesus Christ. Well, it's choice, because you can't get to Jesus without choice. You can't have love without choice. So Jesus is number one, but he's God's greatest gift to humanity is choice. And if we don't respect the choice in others, we're not being godly, because he gives us the choice to determine what we're going to believe and how we're going to live. And I talk to my kids a lot about choices and consequences, and they are both just amazing kids. I mean, they're intelligent, they're well spoken, they're social, and yes, they got different ideas from me, but that's okay, because they get to work out their story.
Now, tell me about when you found Jesus, when you decided that you're going to follow.
So I was sprinkled Catholic. I was baptized in an all black Baptist church in New York State, upstate New York. We didn't have a tank in the church we were going to, and it was the most amazing experience hearing everybody sing. But that was just getting saved when I was 7. Then when I was 14, I went through some rough stuff. My parents got separated. I went through 2 cases of mononucleosis. So I was really sick. And I just remember, real bad headache, bleeding into the bathtub, saying I was fighting with my mom. Nothing was right. And I just said, God, I'm just going to mess this up if I try to do this myself. I give it to you. So that was age 14 is when I got serious about my walk with God. And then I went to Bible college and only did 3 semesters, dropped out and joined the Marine Corps. So I tell people I'm well-rounded, learned how to save people and learned how to kill people. Then, I was hard after the heart of God my entire adult life. So the book really talks about struggling through those issues of, like being spirit-filled. Holy Spirit is so underutilized and under discussed in today's church. So working through that in my own experience was super important, because there was a time I was actually face down on the floor at 10 o'clock at night in tears, saying, God, you got to tell me what is up with these spirit-filled people who keep telling me I don't have something, like it's like you're holding out on me. And God said to me, just say, and I just went, and then out of my mouth starts pouring a different language. And my brain is listening to my mouth go on and on and on. And I start thinking to myself, I could be making this up. And then the language changes. And I thought, I could be making this up. And for about 40 minutes, I heard about 30 different languages come out of my mouth. And then I hear thundering through my brain, it's me. Okay. And ironically enough, that's not the moment I would say I became spirit filled, because I couldn't speak in tongues after that. I had to go learn how to meditate. So I went on this journey to learn how to quiet my mind so I could hear the voice of God. And then I was up 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock. I was meditating. About 50 minutes in, I'm like, I literally thought to myself these words. I'm like, screw this. I'm just going to pray. I started praying, in English, and out comes a prayer language. And so if we desire to know God, he will show up at the right season. He's not holding out on you. but you might have to get things out of the way to discover him. You might have to get things out of the way to hear him. You might have to get things removed from your life to be able to grow to the next level. And so many people are not willing to do that because it's uncomfortable. It takes effort. It takes time. I mean, even meditating, it's hard to sit still for an hour. And a lot of people probably in your audience will criticize that and say it's new agey. I don't like new agey stuff in Christianity, but I think there's a lot to learning how to get the noise out of your mind and focus on scripture, focus on the name of Jesus, focus on God until you can go conversational with him in your heart.
Now, I don't want to skip over something that would be easy to miss here, but I love that you mentioned you heard God say in your mind. There are so many there's so many people that get turned away from Christianity. For example, myself, I've been a Christian forever. I love God, love Jesus. I know that Jesus died to save me from my sins, but I'm 40 years insulin dependent diabetic. I've been on, I've had more surgeries, 11 surgeries on one leg, not counting, a whole bunch of other stuff. Survived a malignant glioblastoma brain tumor, given less than 90 days to live, with 0% chance of survival back in 2010. As a Christian, say 15 years ago, or even I'm in my early 20s, and people would say, "Oh, I'm praying to God. Oh, God told me, I heard God say that He's going to heal you. I just have faith. God's going to heal you." And I heard all these people over and over. I'm like, read the Bible cover to cover. I'm praying relentlessly for trying to get an answer. Go, God, why aren't you healing me? Why, if all these people are telling me I'm going to be healed, why don't you? Are they lying to me, or do you not love me enough to do what you said they're going to do? But mentioning that it's not an audible voice, that was the big thing that I had a hard time with for a long time. That was struggling with going, if all of these people are hearing God say something, I pray over and over and over for answers. Grew up in an extremely abusive household, praying. I'd hear people say, God told me this. I'm like, God, just say something to me. So I love that you said that. I heard God say in my mind, because that's how God talks to us, is through thought, through, as you're reading the Bible, you open up, you read, and you could read an answer that he's meaning for you to get. Share a story from Guns, Freedom, and Jesus, or Freedom, Guns, and Jesus, that hits you the hardest when you read it back today.
There's so many. There's probably a couple I didn't put in there. There's one page in here where I say, Emma gets it. She is my precious daughter. And there's a picture in here where she's in a little tutu and you can see the orbs of light around her. And she's like looking up at them. And this kid talked to angels. This kid, as a 3-year-old, would lay on her bed and talk to angels, and I'd be listening. And one day she told me about this amazing golden fountain of wisdom that's in heaven. And this kid's too young. She didn't have any experiences. She didn't have any stories to repeat. She was just barely talking. And you can't ignore children. You can't ignore the connection that children have with God. And you got to figure that we are just learned out of how to communicate with God. And my words earlier weren't just that I heard him. I heard his voices thundering through my mind. There's a different kind of frequency. It's kind of like, I don't know if you could tell the difference between listening to music on an FM station and listening to talk radio when they play the music. There's a difference in the quality. There's a difference in the frequency. And it's the same sort of thing when you're listening to the voice of God. And the Bible talks about training your body to discern the voice of God. And the Bible talks about praying at all time in the Spirit and sometimes with understanding. And these are things that people can't hear and they can't see until they have ears and eyes. And that doesn't come until that right season for you. I can't teach you to do what I've learned because you might not be in the same season. And that's one of the biggest problems with social media and the church today is someone gets a hold of a truth and then they want to jam it into other people's minds. And going back to the original part of the conversation, I didn't sit down to write a book. I sat down to straighten out my own thoughts. And I was reading some just yesterday because I'm in my mom and dad's house and this is their bathroom book. And 2 articles in a row, no answer. It was just about the question. and you ask those questions, how can people be so genuine and say, God told me you're going to get healed, and then you don't get healed? Well, you can get disappointed and jaded and judge them, or you can decide you're going to go on your own journey and find healing. And when I wanted to understand things in the spirit, I mean, I grew up in the North. I came down to North Carolina, and they started talking about revival. I'm like, revival? You can have a revival? I thought revival was when God showed up. You guys are talking about putting on a revival by putting up a tent. I don't really get this. Turns out if you get a bunch of people praising God and really going after the heart of God in the same place, he tends to show up. And you don't learn that if you don't go to those places. And when I wanted to learn healing, it's because I saw someone on YouTube who was doing a lot of healing, and I wanted to know about it. And I went to a healing school up in Pennsylvania, Randy Clark. And if I was battling cancer or any other serious thing, I would put myself in the environment where people were getting healed to get my answers. I would not listen to the well-meaning person in my denominational church who tells me they heard the voice of the Lord. I would say, how do you heal? How does healing work? If people are learning to heal, let me put my body in there so they can practice on me. What does it look like when Holy Spirit shows up? Because those are very real things, and God does not operate according to our formulas. People want to make a formula out of spiritual truth, and he's just not in that box. He shows up. He will bless who he'll bless, and he'll curse who he'll curse. So, you find someone who says they want to make a difference in the kingdom and they want to heal, and you say, how bad do you want to heal? Are you willing to pray for 100 people for healing and only see 2 of them get healed? Because that's the way it goes. And then once you do 100, you do the next 100 and you see 10 people get healed. You do the next 100 and you see 20 people get healed. Because you start to realize the power that's in you rather than thinking about the power that you don't have. Because doubt will kill healing in a heartbeat.
This interview is sponsored by Newswire magazine. We celebrate the entrepreneurs and thought leaders shaping the future. Those who don't just adapt, but innovate. Who inspire others to think bigger, lead boldly, and create lasting change. Only a select few are featured in Newswire magazine. And for those who earn a place on the cover, the opportunities are unmatched. Your story shared with a global audience. Your achievements celebrated on national billboards, reaching millions. Every leader has a story. Every vision deserves a platform. Who will rise to the top? Stay tuned. You're witnessing greatness unfold.
Hey, welcome back to Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. If you're watching this on a newer smart TV, pause the show, scroll down. There'll be a clickable link you can get a hold of to actually buy a copy of Freedom Guns Jesus. I'd love to have you guys get a hold of that book and just take a look and leave some feedback, leave a good positive review for Christian. Final question for you here, Christian. What message do you hope every reader walks away with from this interview?
Be real. Ask real questions. Demand real answers. Be honest. Don't be afraid to tackle hard topics. Don't be afraid to lead. This book is about really boldly asking tough questions. And it's called, the subtitle is The Settled Musings of a Christian. I mean, my name's Christian, so it's a little play on words, but settling things out for yourself so that you will not be shaken by every philosophy that comes across YouTube. Right now, there is a direct assault on the personality, the personness, the individuality of God, an actual loving Father who cares about you and directs your path, and the deity of Christ. Christian Science has been repackaged. We were pretty good in the 80s talking about New Age and how to avoid it, and then science kicked in and started talking about string theory. And now you're looking on YouTube and there's like 7 competing theories, and nobody knows what's true. And so I tell people, the universe is just the physical manifestation, the physical side of a infinite spirit of God. And don't ever confuse the energy, the vibration, or the creation with the person of God and the person of Jesus. I mean, I got a tattoo. It's a bar. the word. It's the Hebrew word just for word. It's the simplest word. It's multi-purpose. It means commandment, decree, oracle. It's Jesus in the Old Testament to me, and that's what I decided to focus on when I meditate. God is so simple. One of my favorite teachers says, good God, bad devil. I mean, the more you actually learn about God, the simpler. I mean, you throw out the word religion because faith is so simple. Choose love. Nothing we do is worth anything without love. So operate in integrity and love. Be bold. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to go to court. It doesn't matter. Do what's going to serve your children, serve your wife, and let you sleep at night. Everything you pursue is at a cost to something else. So pursue only the most important things.
Powerful. Thanks again for being a guest on the show today. Today, this was Christian Naef. Just had an awesome conversation here. Grab a copy of his book, Freedom, Guns, and Jesus.
Thanks for watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. This episode was designed to help you level up. See you next time.